Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. That was odd. Bernardo had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. But this time, there were so many more Ravens. There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? Bernardo looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best. What do you guys dress up as for Halloween? Just wondering. Bernardo hated gogglers, but it freaked him out to cut them. Well, He'd always wanted to do that. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. And this is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it? Is a very cool sword, thought Renato. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to? Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lupino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that.
The core of the Sky Ripper?
Lupino's excited.
That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy.
He sure had. Bernardo told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Bernardo. He was thrilled to be back with his old war buddy. He'd missed the Mad Rabbit, but something was not quite right. If only he had some kind of magic ice sword. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead.
Oh, good! I need a new rug for me nest.
Indeed, Raven. What's there? Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air.
And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Bernardo smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. I'm getting a bad feeling about this, Bernardo thought. Maybe Lapina was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. Of course there was a puzzle. You couldn't expect the transcendent emperor to bury a god's eye in a leather sack where anyone could pick it up. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Bernardo felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Bernardo ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Bernardo ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lapino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost. The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renardo. But what if Lapino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renardo ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself. Lapino was a touchy rabbit. Renardo knew that. You're brave, I know, Renardo said. But this is what I was hired to do.
At least let me run ahead and warn the scientists you're coming.
So, Lapino was intent on being a hero, just like him. War made sensible men crazy for glory, and Lapino had never been sensible. But what was the harm? Lapino might well trip over a hornet's nest of ravens, but that was better than ravens lying in ambush, wasn't it? They finished the trip to the Nexus in silence. Bernardo had no sooner rescued his friend than he was putting him back in danger. All right, he finally said as they landed. Go. As Renardo watched Lapino vanish on the horizon, he could feel nausea building in him. He felt ill. Could his knees really be aching this much? But how could he have handed the core off to Lapino? That was a recipe for disaster. This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about anyway?
That was always a rush. It was time for a little exploration. This chest smelled kind of funky. He hoped he didn't get it in his clothes. Bernardo felt worse. All his joints were aching now. He'd been through beatings that felt better than this. So the core had a kind of poison that could harm you without even touching you. That's new. Well, it had power. The rebellion needed something with power. And how was this any worse than a sword wound? Well, a death by sword was sudden and fair. This was just squalid. A piecemeal death, like old age. With all this ore, Renato could forge a really great sword. He was a master forger. That probably wasn't the right word. This was much easier than free climbing.
Time, Bob.
Or some people were just liable to explode if you upset them.
No one could beat Renato at hunting. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists everywhere. Bernardo found the mad rabbit cowering under a desk. The ravens, they must have known we were coming, said Lupino. How did you... Well, see, I was doing a card trick with my lucky deck, and I kind of bobbled the cards, so I went under the desk to gather them up, and boom! I guess we'll have to take the car straight to the secret base. The secret rebel base. Yes. They had engineers there. But wait. Calaveras, the sage in the mountains. Maybe he would know what to do with the naked core. Ah, yes. The secret base. Not even Lupino knew where it was. They had engineers there. Those toads would surely know what to do with the core's power. And then he'd be free of it. But he couldn't take Lupino. The core would work its evil on him too. You stay here.
Give me the coordinates. I'll meet you there.
Someone needs to bury these scientists.
Why do I get all the fun jobs?
And with that, Bernardo returned to the Farfarer and took off. The ruins were quiet, but Renato could hear a buzzing in his ears. Was it bugs? Or was it the core slowly feeding him poison? The council would know what to do. If the core had this much power, it could surely change the terms of the great battle that was coming. And maybe they would take this burden from him. Maybe. He wasn't that good. Yet. There was an engraving. Maximum capacity, 130 people. Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Renato. What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. Boy, someone has spent a lot of money for a graduation present. How had it come to this? Renato had signed on as an adventurer. Sure, the Emperor had gone mad. Sure, Renato had heard horrors from the ghosts of dead kittens and puppies sacrificed in his blasphemous rituals. But when he jumped in, he'd only been a little bored and slightly broke. And here he was, carrying a bucket of death across a broken landscape. Why not drop it and run? Because he hated to quit in the middle. That was his fatal flaw. He had to know how it all turned out. Huh? A lever? That was new. Most people still use doorknobs. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. He was on fire. So far, so good. Come over here. Renato had learned so much about... What was it again? Renato remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times. He dropped the core at the entrance to the council chambers.
Get that thing out of here!
Croaked the speaker.
It's making us sick!
That's the core of the Sky Ripper, said Renato.
No, it's not useless at all,
Said an engineer toad.
It's poisonous. Look at the fox. He's ill. Probably dying.
Yeah, not useless at all, said Renato. So what do I do? Rub it on His Majesty? The engineer chuckled. Renato didn't like it when engineers chuckled.
Oh, I got it. Listen, I can make a bomb that spread bits of the core all over a circle about 100 paces wide. Yeah, little chunks of poison and death. All you have to do is just get it near the Emperor. It'll kill him and his bodyguard and chop off the head of the fleet. Yeah, and if we're lucky, might poison some of the ravens around there as well.
What about me?
Right, what about you? Well, I'll build in a timer. You can set it and run.
No, that's a horrible idea, said Renato.
Well, we have to do something, yes?
Said the speaker.
This is something.
Renato couldn't argue with that.
And so, reluctantly, Renato loaded the rigged core onto the Farfarer and set sail towards the Emperor's ship. The rebels took the fight to the Imperial fleet, but Renato was too sick to enjoy the view. He must have passed out as a firm hand grabbed him and shoved him forward. This was it.
The fleet seemed very big, and its ravens very tough. Or maybe he was just slower and weaker than before. He hated the idea of poisoning the enemy. It wasn't fair. Face to face with a raven, let the best swordsman survive. But they wouldn't even know what was killing them. Feather by feather, scale by scale. He didn't mind dying a hero. That sometimes went with being a hero. But he didn't feel at all like a hero. Not today. Renato felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that.
The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want it to go. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger.
I think this is yours, said Renato. But he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. He was exhausted. He was making stupid mistakes. Spurs coming off in bunches. Up ahead, he could see the Emperor's ship, long and sleek, a floating palace. The bomb would only poison a circle 100 paces wide. He would get as close as he could, set it, and run. Oh, this was a lousy way to win a rebellion, he thought. He didn't want a medal for this. He just wanted to be forgotten. These platforms were great. Renato wanted one for his house. Tried. You're hooked. Renato twisted the timer on the bomb as far as it would go and staggered off. His knees hurt. Oh, everything hurt. He staggered away as far as he could until he had to lie down. He could see the entire Imperial fleet from here and the rebel ships engaged with it. There was a blinding flash. And a second later, a monstrous thump. Burning rocks arced across the sky over both fleets. A wreath of fire shot outwards, rolling across the fleets. A pillar of smoke boiled up from where the Emperor's ship had been. It reached into the clouds. That's a wee bit more than 100 paces, thought Renato. It took Renato most of that evening to die. Some of the toughest ravens lasted all week. Some of the rebels in the furthest ships survived as much as a month. That winter, with neither Empire nor rebels to rule them, the islands slid into banditry. And so began the Second Age of Darkness. Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again.
and still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens?